I'll ask this one. What do you do when grief comes knocking? Grief is love with nowhere to go. And I'll ask you that in both yourself and supporting a partner who has grief as well. Like, what does that look like when grief comes a knocking for your partner?
For your partner. Yeah. Well, then I think about routine again and the importance of taking care of daily life and the things that the kids and the dogs still need to be fed and that kind of stuff. I go to prayer. Grief is so overwhelming to people that it is love that if somebody is passed, that you can no longer convey that to them, in time, maybe not right at the beginning, but just helping other people and giving that love that I would have given to that person or that whatever, the loss of a relationship or a breakup or something, it's easy to go directly inward and hold on to that. It's really a great concept that grief is love with nowhere to go, because what helps so much is going outward and just getting into your body and going out to help other people.
Right.
And how can I help somebody else that's maybe in this situation, or how can I just make somebody else's life better? How can I give this love reserved for somebody else?
I mean, because it is. And it's funny. What do you do when grief comes knocking? The reality is grief doesn't knock. It just shows up, right? It kicks open that door like, grief.
Right.
Here you go, down on the ground. But I do love that grief is love, because it's love with nowhere to go. As someone who is still grieving a loss, for me, it's like I grieve the loss of what could have been, right? Like, there's love there. There was a child that I really never got to know. And that's what I'm grieving, is like, I would have loved to have gotten to know them, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's just love. It's got nowhere to go. But that's what grief is. It
sneaks up on you.
It does. You're not ready for it, and you got to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, it comes out in all these different depression, anger. I'm angry that I didn't get the opportunity to do,
Yeah.
And it just comes up at different times, like birthdays, holidays, random Thursday.
Right.
You don't know when you're just going to kind of get hit by that little wave,
What gives you peace in that, Nick?
I mean, first of all, that he's obviously up there with God, right? Like, that's so lucky to have a child up in heaven already looking down on his siblings and me, and he's up there with my grandfather, and I got an uncle,
Yeah.
So like, I try to lean on that like, man, he's up there having a ball right now.
Right.
Because that's what you want for anyone, right? And the grief is a selfish thing in a way, right?
Totally.
I want him here with me.
Right. Right.
But it wasn't meant to be. And we're all in here in this world to go there. I mean, heaven on earth, but
that's right.
Heaven's there. And like, that's the ultimate goal. So like, he just got to go first. Lucky kiddo. And so I think there's solidarity in that.
It's a fine way of looking at it, though, in part that grief is a selfish sort of emotion in so many ways. Right? It's about your loss. It's about my loss.
Right.
It's about what we don't have anymore.
Right.
Right.
It's like almost like, I don't have like, I have a aunt who lost a husband, and like, man, I wish so bad for my cousins to have their dad. And that's my selfish grief. I just want my cousins to have their dad back. But like, that's, grief, it's love, whether it's a car accident or a loss or a breakup. There was a time where I was angry at God, my son, but it's like, that's not, for me, that's the selfish part of it. And you have to figure out how then you're dealing with the loss of that love.
I guess a lot of these dark emotions are easy to suppress or ignore them,
right?
Too. They come out
right
in different ways that are not healthy.
Sure.
Going into it and feeling it was what God wants us to do.
I think that's part of the journey, right? Is you have to kind of humble yourself and go through the crappiness of it.
Yeah.
If that's being angry for a little bit and being depressed, I think it's okay and healthy But then you got to realize that you do have to, got to keep going. You got to,
Right.
got to keep growing. Right.
Yeah. There you go.
Is all you're doing. Your growing is not easy. And part of that is surrounding yourself with people who support you and are positive influences, and praying and
Yes.
going to church and, fighting for your family. And it's that routine again. You just need to find your way back to the tracks.
Yep.
Every time. It's not easy.